One of the most interesting features of Cyberpunk is its approach to moral complexity. And it doesn't just hit really good because it makes for an interesting story, but tales of moral complexity ring very true to real life. The cyberpunk world, just like ours, is a messy place. And the Cyberpunk 2077 Trauma Team comic is an excellent showcase of that complexity. After my first read, I was just like, what the hell? But then when I went back and reread it again, I couldn't truly wholly despise any character, even the main asshole of this story. Spoilers ahead for Cyberpunk Trauma Team. If you haven't read the comic, it's less than 100 pages long. You could probably get through it in maybe half an hour, 45 minutes. I would recommend giving it a read. You know the drill, my name is Liddy, and welcome to Shaped by Stories, where we unpack how characters shape stories, and how those stories shape us. Let's get into it. Our story begins on a rainy night in Japantown. There's a shootout in the streets with an overturned car and corpo guards doing their best to save their employer. But it doesn't take long for those guards to be put down. However, lucky for the client in the car, Trauma Team arrives. A team consisting of Dodds, Nadia, Mason, Xander, Simmons, and Adson. As Nadia and Xander tend to their patient, things start to go south with the death of Dodds, and Nadia freezes. Not just because she has lost a teammate, but because Dodds was her lover. The other guard is shot by their patient's attackers, and then when evac comes to provide covering fire and to evacuate the patient, they are brought down by an unknown solo, who leaps up and impales the two other surviving members of Nadia's team. The AV flails around, shooting the crowd, even shooting the only other remaining team member on the ground, Xander, the medic, leaving Nadia the only survivor of her entire team, a team she has served with for 2 years, who she has grown close to. But not only did Nadia manage to survive for just a few seconds longer, for more backup to arrive, she even saved the client. As the world around her and everybody she knew and cared about lay dead, she held it together somehow. Fast forward to the present, and Nadia sits in a laboratory, facing across the table an Ice Queen-looking corpo therapist, whose hair I really wish my V could have, because I don't want Meredith's hair, I want that hair. Anyway, Nadia is hooked up to a heart monitor, measuring her stress, her blood pressure, everything, and her ability to return to work is being questioned. However, the questions that Nadia is being asked are not exactly the most compassionate, not exactly focused on her state of mind for her own well-being. Trauma Team is an inhuman entity offering top-of-the-line human care, healthcare, for those who can afford it. All the questions in this psychologist's interview with Nadia shows the company's primary concern in all this. They first ask Nadia about her pay grade. Is she resentful of her pay? Then they ask, is this all just a job to you? Nadia says that she really wants to just get back to work, despite everything that she suffered, saying she's ready, and that she would rather be anywhere else out there helping patients than sitting in her room being depressed and grieving all day. Nadia says to the therapist, I'm ready. It's been weeks, sitting in my flat, doing nothing. It makes me feel like I died out there too. When they ask if she's restless, Nadia says that she's only restless because she doesn't like being sidelined. When she's asked if she has dreams or nightmares, she says she doesn't know. She doesn't remember her dreams. As Nadia sits there in the chair looking morose, looking half there, half not, she says that she understands why she has to be screened. She understands that after watching her whole crew die, after living through such a violent, traumatic experience, she knows that the company has some skepticism as to her ability to perform. But Nadia says that if she didn't think she could handle it, she wouldn't have been with Trauma Team at all. All the blood, all the bullets flying. Yet she held out and kept the client alive until evac. Nadia says, I did something good. And when the therapist asks her to elaborate, Nadia seals the corpo deal by saying, "Yeah, for the company." And right after that, they give Nadia the green light to go back into the field. And it's not because they think Nadia is of sound mind so much. I think it's the fact that, oh, she's loyal to the company and she wants to do good for the company. That is all Trauma Team cares about. Nadia is not well. I don't think anybody would be well after watching their whole team of friends and their lover being mowed down in a matter of seconds. The other thing that lives in Nadia's mind too is that final glance she shared with her lover's killer, that guy who killed her whole team. And his face is locked in her memory, along with that final dead stare of Dodds. That terrible day lives on, but Nadia is determined to move forward. But why? Sometime later, Nadia is back in her gear, ready for her first job back in the field since the tragedy. She's now with Squad Bravo, and Squad Bravo is called out to action in Pacifica, of all places, oh yes. One of the team members, Stratter, speaks to Nadia kind of like she's new to Trauma Team before finding out on the spot, right before this mission, so it's kind of crazy that he wasn't briefed, that Nadia had only just watched her whole team get iced perhaps a few months ago. We don't exactly know the timeline. With this seed of doubt planted, they fly in the Trauma Team AV to a huge skyscraper mega building in Pacifica. The squad lands on the roof of the mega building, heading 3 floors down to find their client. But as they venture through the building, kicking in doors, we see Nadia is the only character who actively notices what's going on around her. The drug abuse, the homelessness. She notices a man who can only breathe through a mask and an oxygen tank sitting in a chair slumped over in his apartment. And that's the thing about Nadia. In the earlier parts of her interview with the psychologist, Nadia admits that her whole reason for joining Trauma Team in the first place is her desire to help people and to do good. It is only at the end of the interview that Nadia adds the bit about doing good for the company. She kind of has to say this because Trauma Team doesn't care about doing the right thing. They only care that their people are competent and dedicated enough to rescue the client, do nothing more than ensure their safety, and get that bag. But for Nadia, it is not so simple just turning off this part of her that wants to do no harm to innocent people who simply need help. And of course, denial of care is a form of harm, and Nadia hates denying people care who need it. As the team nears their client, they are attacked by animals. The gang, not hairless cats. Stratter is hit, but it's just a flesh wound, so he's fine.
Just a flesh wound.
But this event makes Nadia freeze on the spot, and she sees Dodds getting shot in the head again. Nadia thankfully snaps out of her haze of reliving that terrible night, enough to give Stratter a boost. The medtechs move ahead towards the client, while the soldiers cover their flank. And when they bust into the room where the client currently is, Nadia comes face to face with the man who killed her friends, her lover, her team. As Nadia stares at this guy, she is going through it all over again. Like, this poor girl has PTSD, she's traumatized, she's grieving, and despite the fact that she is a member of Trauma Team, able to give high-quality aid to people in the field who need it, she herself cannot afford proper care. I really doubt Trauma Team has a great care package for the people who work for them. Maybe they have something, but that really is the irony of Cyberpunk's for-profit medical care. As I said earlier, Nadia is very much of a mind to do no harm, that is, to people she believes truly need and deserve her help. When it comes to the merc who slaughtered her whole team, who is named Apex, I don't believe he's named in the comic, she actually refuses to provide him any care. But it's then that Gordon, one of the soldiers on her team, is shot fatally by one of the animals, and Nadia rushes over to try to provide last-second care. But it is too late, and Gordon's wounds are too terrible, and he dies. Dr. Freeman is no more. We flash back to the interview that Nadia had with the psychologist, who questions her on her relationships with her team members. When asked if she was close with them, Nadia says, "You get close when you're in the field," but she doesn't seem to volunteer more than that, and there is a reason why. Nadia's relationship with Dodds would have been considered a conflict of interest. Now, whether this would have led to them both being fired or simply reassigned to different units, who knows? Trauma Team, of course, wants to know how close she was to the people she worked with, because if a medic is more attached to her team, she's probably not going to be as loyal to rescuing the patient as Trauma Team wants. Back to the present situation, Nadia is told by Knapp, her fellow medic, that she needs to leave Gordon. He's gone, he's dead, she needs to help the client. He tells her not to pull that stunt again, refusing to treat the patient and running to treat somebody who is dead. Our job is to get the client out of this, alive, he says. While Apex mutters with a smirk on his face, customer is always right. This line triggers another flashback for her, where she's actually out with Dodds on a noodle date. So they're walking the street, they're eating cheap noodles. And Nadia debates him on this philosophy, saying the customer is not always right. Dodds says, maybe not Nadia, but the customer is always the customer. And that's who we're paid to help. Nadia cracks a joke about their pittance of a paycheck, when Dodds cautions her to not talk like that within earshot of their bosses at Trauma Team. Nadia went to answer this with a more joking response because she genuinely does not adhere to the Trauma Team values all that strongly. And I get the feeling that her team was probably very forgiving of her tendency to operate more along the lines of helping people who needed it. Whereas her current team does not operate like that. They are very much strictly for the customer. But as this flashback turns to a sort of nightmare vision, Dodds reveals something about himself. He says to Nadia, here's something you haven't considered. Some of the people we're paid to help, they need us. Yeah, we might help the dregs, but we help good people too. I don't think you'd be a part of the team if you didn't believe that. I do think while the pictures that Nadia sees here are not what actually happened, the words that Dodds says are probably the words that he did indeed say. Back face to face with Apex. Apex tells them, you can't just walk me out of here. We are 100 floors up from the ground. There's gang members everywhere. We're gonna have a rough time getting out of here, especially with Gordon now being dead, so one soldier down. Stratter calls for evac, and their shuttle comes in with the plan to blow up a hole in the building wall, and then they can all jump out and get pulled back up into the AV. There you go. Easy, if very dangerous, evac. But this plan is cut short when the animals come in with an RPG and shoot down the AV. So far, this first op back in the field for Nadia is just reliving the past all over again. Teammates are dying. The AV crashed. What's next? Apex is here, so maybe he'll kill someone next, right? Is probably what she's thinking. So now we're down to Knapp, Stratter, and Nadia as the only surviving members of this squad. Mid-firefight, Nadia goes into a wet dream sort of state, I guess, remembering an intimate, close moment with Dodds, which, I do like the art here. It feels very warm and fuzzy, very cute. Nadia's all cheeky with him. She is totally butterflies in love with Dodds here, but Dodds, in the post-nut clarity, is saying that he actually kinda regrets getting with her, and she's hurt by this. Dodds explains, when we're in the field, we have to make snap decisions, and we can't let our relationship cloud our judgment. But his feelings for Nadia do show that he's not as dedicated as maybe he tries to sell himself as. And Nadia, of course, doesn't even try to hide that she would save Dodds over the clients any day of the week, no matter who the client was. But when Dodds is asked that same question, he kinda hesitates. But of course, because this is a half nightmare, half memory, Nadia then sees Apex coming up out of nowhere and holding a knife to Dodds' throat as she presumably watches him get killed again. I'm thinking of the Mad Men quote again with Dodds, one never knows how loyalty is born. Also, calling back to what Dodds said earlier about how they do save some people who genuinely need help, good people, how would you be able to compartmentalize not helping people who clearly, desperately need your help, and helping somebody who maybe just has a broken toe? We see this in the No Coincidence novel as well, with Melina and her car accident versus a boy dying in a burning car when all she has is like a broken leg. Like, I'm sure some trauma team medics can totally just ignore the fact that they're skipping over people who need more help simply because they are not a paying customer, but it seems to me that Dodds does have a bit of that moral conflict going on. Nadia wakes up from this nightmare in the dim, gloomy mess of her room, and you can really see the mess of depression that she's been living in prior to getting back in the field. Of course, she'd want to go back to work. She lives with trash on the floor. The plants that were once vibrant and lush on her windowsill now sit crumbling and rotting. There's pills on the floor. The other thing too is Nadia said that she doesn't remember her dreams to her therapist, but clearly she remembers her nightmares. They haunt her both asleep and awake. As Nadia is frozen and locked up again in that prison of her memory, Apex actually takes out 3 Animals members himself and saves Nadia and the rest of the team. And the thing about Apex that we can see right from the beginning of his appearance in the first chapter of the story, he enjoys killing. He always has this grin on his face after committing a violent act or taking a life. So yeah, taking people out of the world for money. Versus Nadia, who does her work because she enjoys helping people, keeping people in the world. Nadia's character does show throughout this comic how truthfully devoted she is to doing something good. She tries to save her new teammates, who are strangers, who do save lives, even if they're very limited to the lives they can save. But the something good can also mean taking someone dangerous or bad out of the world, as we see when Nadia holds her gun to his head and says something good. Apex turns to Nadia and just grins at her, because he's nuts. He's all for it. He is definitely like, I dare you. And this is when Stratter comes up and grabs Nadia's arm and questions what the fuck she's doing. Nadia looks him dead in the eye and tells him this is the bastard who slaughtered my whole team, right in front of me. And she says, he enjoyed it. He did. She's not wrong. Whether or not Apex knew that Nadia was part of that team or not from the very beginning, I don't know, but he definitely knows now, and he's not even sorry. Stratter tells Nadia to drop her gun, and he says, this is the damn job. That's the other thing about this story so far, is he's not wrong. When you sign up for Trauma Team, you're not able to provide medical care and help other people. You're supposed to save the client. This is the job that he signed up for as well, and probably what the rest of his team, now dead, knew they were signing up for. Stratter takes the lead here as the only soldier left, and they move through the building. They have to descend on foot instead of going to the roof because they don't have evac, and they have 100 floors to climb down, so it's gonna be a long walk. Apex admits that the reason why the animals are so hell-bent on killing him is because he had a gig that was good money. All he had to do was get into the building, find the animals' boss, and then kill him. And Apex says, I didn't think they would be so mad. I didn't realize that the animals love their boss so much. That if they want to live through this, they're gonna have to get as wild as the animals. Absolutely wild. And this is an important line. Now, as they're descending the stairs, Nadia remembers one of the most important things that she said in her therapy session. Nadia says that sitting around is just going to drive her crazy, and that she knows that she can help the company. She knows she can, and she can help Trauma Team's clients. Because helping others is how Nadia helps herself. In Nadia's mind, saving other people's lives is how she's going to bring herself back from the living land of the dead. But the problem is, that's not how Trauma Team works. So far, Nadia is having an identity crisis. You can see that she is combating within herself the Trauma Team MO and the medic that she knows that she should be, even in Dodds' words, in everybody else's words that she has spoken to so far in her new squad. Meanwhile, Nadia so far hasn't been able to help a single person on this mission. They've either died or they're Apex, who she does not believe deserves any help. The people that she's seen in the building so far, the poor, the destitute, people who are sick and suffering from addiction, she can't help them. People who are so poor that they can probably barely afford bottom-of-the-barrel medical care. That's why clinics like that converted church in Dogtown is so important in Night City. Back to their long descent down the stairs, Apex turns to Nadia, still with that smirk on his face, and says, "Maybe you should have just killed me." And it's here that Nap does try to reason with Nadia and say, "Nadia, calm down, he's just baiting with you, he's playing with you." And you know, to Nap's credit, he is probably one of the nicest people in Nadia's new team, but it's a shame because then he gets shot. They're forced to flee onto one of the floors to find an apartment where they can lay Nap down. Stratter covers them while Apex and Nadia carry Nap to safety. They bust their way into the apartment of a lady and a little girl on the 94th floor, and they commandeer the place in order to provide emergency treatment. But it's here that the mother in this apartment begs Nadia to help her daughter, who is extremely sick and may very well die from whatever's going on with her. While Nadia is distracted looking at this little girl, Nap takes a nap forever. Stratter is pissed, and he blames Nadia for Nap's death, which isn't exactly fair because Nap may very well have died anyway. It wasn't looking too good for him. But Stratter doesn't really have too much time to be angry with Nadia because the animals have found them. They have busted into the 94th floor. As Stratter is trying to figure out what to do, the mother in this apartment begs Nadia to help her daughter. She says, "I'll let you stay here if you help her." Stratter comes over and shoves her away, saying that she's not helping you. You are not part of the mission. And it's here that Nadia just totally goes full on herself in this situation. She says, "Who cares? That little girl has every right to treatment. If a murderer deserves treatment, then so does that child." Stratter argues in the trauma team way, that child is not our client. But Apex, of all people, shows up mid-argument and says, "Let her look after the kid. Just give me some stimulants. I'll go out there and deal with your problem with the animals." Nadia is resistant to even giving him that. So Stratter gives him the stim, saying, "This is our only shot. You want to die anyway?" So Apex goes out there and does what he does best. He slaughters a slew of animals. This guy is absolutely wild. Not only does he talk the talk about being wild, he does indeed walk the walk. And he does this in maybe 2 minutes because that's all the stimulants will last. Back in the apartment, Stratter shows up and continues to blame Nadia for Gordon's death, for Nap's death, criticizing her for doing everything she can for this little rat, as he refers to this kid. And then there's the irony of Stratter seeing Nadia's failure to provide care to their teammates, even though Nadia was ordered not to provide care to Gordon, but to go provide care for Apex. And it's just like, this is all so messed up. Nadia says that she's a medic. She's going to do what she can to help her, and she tells Stratter to get off her back and get his shit together. Stratter then grabs Nadia by the throat and says, "I'm not the one who needs to know their place here." He says Nadia's going to get them killed if she doesn't do her job. He demands one good reason to let her go. But Nadia grabs Stratter's pistol and holds it to his stomach, saying, "Is this good enough?" But before things can get to an explosive head, Apex returns, huffing and puffing and covered in blood, saying they have an opening, but it's not gonna last for long and they gotta go. Stratter then tells Nadia that he's gonna tell the company what she's done. He's basically gonna screw her over. And see, this is where it gets complex. I understand why. And I also understand why Nadia is doing what she's doing. Stratter tries to stop Nadia once again from actually handing over the medicine, but Apex is the one who says, "Give the kid a chance. Let Nadia do her thing," which is very interesting. Perhaps this is a way for Apex to make a degree of amends with Nadia, who I think he knows wants him dead, who has no desire to save his life. But I also sort of see it a little more along the lines of Apex is aware of what he is. He's aware that he's a piece of shit, he's a murderer. But he also sees that this is a kid who still has a life to live. She hasn't fucked up yet. The only fuck up in her life is that she was born probably in Night City. So yeah, why not give the kid a chance to turn out better than he did? Nadia is definitely kind of shocked that Apex is the one saying let her treat the child. As Nadia follows Apex and Stratter down the hall, she goes back to one of her final conversations with Dodds. She demands an answer to the question, if it's between her life and a client's, who is he gonna save? Dodds says that that is not an easy answer. We made a commitment to the company, and our job is to save the client. And for Nadia, it is an easy answer, because she would do everything, anything. But then we're contrasted with Nadia back in that first failed op where Dodds and her team was killed, where Nadia is tending to not Dodds, but to the client. And yes, Dodds was pretty much dead. I think Nadia knew he was dead, but it's just interesting to see that, like, rather than Nadia running over to his body to, like, do something, anything to try and, like, put him back together, she was still trying to save the client. She was helping the client as he maybe would have done. Nadia did not stay true to herself in that moment, I think. And I think that is the crux of her inner conflict. I think Nadia did there what she thought Dodds would have wanted in that moment. What he would have thought was the right thing to do. Like, maybe she genuinely did stay there to try and help save the client because she just wanted to save someone to make all of this loss have a purpose. But I sort of see that layer there too of her trying to do something so opposite to what she herself truly feels deep down. The point is, Nadia wasn't true to herself, to her word to Dodds deep down. Like, yeah, Nadia wants to help people who need her help, but again, she even says Dodds was on a pedestal above that, even. You gotta feel for her, because she's got immense survivor's guilt. But she's not the only one. They exit the building past another drug addict who says that line that the guy at the top of the tower said, "Bad things. Bad things happen here." Nadia sees the bad things happening around her. She sees the injustice. She sees the countless, endless people who need help, who will never get it. Back out in the street, finally, with just Stratter, Nadia, and Apex left. Stratter says they need to find a place to hide. The animals are not far behind. He calls for evac, but then Stratter says, "When they show up, you're done. You think you'll have a fucking job once I give them my report?" Oh yes, he's gonna report Nadia. Stratter glares at Nadia, saying, "You weren't ready for the field. Anybody could see it. You're rattled. But then we see the two hands come around his head and snap his neck. Apex killed Stratter, and Apex just says, "Don't mention it." In his mind, he's doing Nadia a favor. He's like, "That guy was gonna screw you over. Now you're the only surviving member of the team. You're the good little trauma team medic. I've done you a favor. Now save my life." And Nadia, even though clearly she and Stratter did not like each other, she does sort of try to save him, even though he's dead. She does lean over his body. She's down there trying to think, what can she do? Of course, nothing, because he's dead. Despite everything, Nadia is fucked up over this, because once again, this guy shows up and has a hand in eradicating her whole team. But they have absolutely no time to waste, because the animals have found them and they're hot on their heels. A fight ensues in the streets, and Nadia is stabbed and tossed to the ground by the animals. She reaches and reaches for her pistol that has been knocked out of her grip. Apex fights and does hold his own for a minute, but even he can't last that long now, especially without a stim. Apex is almost killed by one of the heavy hitter animals that shows up, when Nadia picks up her gun and just mows down a bunch of animals, including the big boss. Nadia and Apex try to flee, but they're both injured and they're just hobbling around the streets. They come face to face with another horde of animals, and Apex is like, "This is it." But Nadia smiles. Apex is like, "Why are you smiling?" Nadia says, "Backup's here," and the AV comes down and mows down all the animals that they were about to get totally mowed down by. But I don't think that's why Nadia is smiling. Because right before that big moment, Nadia says, "This is the job. This is what I signed up for. I wanted to get back out in the field." And I think it's in this moment she's realizing how bonkers everything is. Nadia has spent the whole story fighting with herself, in trying to move forward and live the trauma team life as Dodds spoke of it. But she, of course, can't do that. She's never been inclined to do it. And you know the Shakespeare quote, "To thine own self be true." And I don't even think that that's important on a moral standpoint either. It's because you can only be one person in your life, and that is yourself. And Nadia's deep belief of trying to help people and do good is a deep part of who she is. So yeah, this whole job has been a big, messy joke. Yes, on that last op, when everybody around her died, Nadia did save the client, while everyone lay dead around her. And what did that get her? Right back in the same position, again, while the guy who caused the first tragedy goes free and gets cared for, while everybody around her dies again, not entirely by his hand, but because of him. As the AV lands and the reinforcements arrive to take Apex to care, Nadia pulls out her gun, saying, "I finished the mission, everyone else died, but I saved the client." But what did that get her? We see the faces of her first team flashing in her mind, killed in action, killed in action, killed in action. And she holds her gun once again to the back of Apex's head. And of course the other trauma team members start freaking out. They're like, "What are you doing? Drop it." And Apex is like, "I'm the customer. Platinum. I saved you, and I saved your job." So yeah, I think he did think he was gonna get maybe some loyalty points from her because of what he did. I think it's up to the reader to decide if there was some genuine, actual feelings behind the things that he did in helping Nadia in this job. The trauma team soldiers have her in their sights, but Nadia is using Apex as a shield. She says, "I know what you are." Dodds' voice speaks to her, his phantom appearing at her back. "Don't do this, Nadia. You can still get through this. You don't have to throw your life away like this." Nadia says to his phantom, "What's it matter?" Dodds tells her, "Don't do this for me." And it's here that Nadia says, "It's not for you." And this is a really important moment because Nadia, instead of doing what she thought Dodds would want her to do, like she did with the end of the first disaster, she's here doing what she feels is the truest thing for herself to do, in line with her beliefs. Apex says, "Neither one of us, huh?" All Nadia says with a stutter is, "How's it feel?" Apex's last words, I think, are, "Feels platinum." And the ending is sort of ambiguous here, but I do think Nadia did take the shot here because we see the one pistol shell casing surrounded by a bunch of assault rifle casings, I'm assuming, on the bloody pavement. So I think she did take the shot. I think she did kill Apex, and I think it's very likely that she was killed by Trauma Team. But that leaves us now at the discussion point, what I've been waiting to get to. So, first of all, I wanted to talk about the dehumanization that comes with a uniform. Back in retail, I hated wearing any form of uniform. I hated it. Some people are down with it. Some people like the simplicity that comes with, "This is my outfit that I have to wear today. Great, one less decision." But I want to talk about how it takes away the kind of autonomy, the kind of humanity in the trauma team members. Trauma team in particular, their helmets look almost kind of frightening and monstrous with all the eyes and stuff like that, with all the little eye circle thingies. Like, they're scary in 2077. You don't want to fuck with Trauma Team, especially when you're at a lower level. But Trauma Team is known for being dangerous and extremely hard to fight. That is why Trauma Team costs so much. They got the firepower and the determination and the skills to do it. And the thing that I like is that while most of the Trauma Team members are alive, they are in their uniforms, they're in their helmets until they're dead. Like, they're all basically just drones, and that is kind of how the company views them, just numbers on a paper, a pay stub to dole out at the end of every month or at every 2 weeks or whatever. Like, for most of Nadia's original team, we never see any of their faces except for in the pictures that she is shown while she is sitting at that table with the therapist, where they're all marked as killed in action. The only character whose face we see from that team ourselves is Dodds' face, but only after he's dead. It's then that the humanity of that soldier that was inside, who is not just a corporate drone, is revealed. They weren't just an intimidating hive mind force of soldiers meant to scare people away, but they were people. And we see this similar sort of thing with their faces revealed after death with her second team. We see Knapp and Gordon's face. And we also see that Nadia, as she more and more decides to act more in line with her own self and what she believes and what she values, her helmet comes off. She's not going to try to be a trauma team drone, she's going to be Nadia. And I do really like that we don't see Stratter's face, because Stratter is dedicated to the very, very end, to his strong trauma team loyalty. And there's a couple things I want to say about Stratter. Because Stratter basically just went through the same thing that Nadia did with her first team. He watched his entire team die. Everybody. These are people that he has served with in this kind of circumstance for how many years? Yes, Stratter blames Nadia rather unfairly, I think, but he's not wrong that Nadia's fuck-ups did not help the team at all and did take away from some very important moments that they could have used to escape, where everybody could have made it out alive. The other thing about Stratter, too, is that his beliefs are a lot like Dodds' beliefs about the company. It's just Stratter may be a little more solid in how he feels about the trauma team MO. Like, whether Dodds would have stayed true to his philosophy under pressure is unknown because he died, but Stratter is clinging to the meaning of his mission. And I do think, not unlike Nadia, it's probably kind of because what would all the death be for if the client wasn't saved, if he didn't stay true to the mission? And from Stratter's point of view, in comes this random traumatized medtech on her first job with them, who talked her way back into the field, who then kind of fucks things up for them. And the other thing too, in connecting with Dodds' philosophy and Stratter, is that that's gotta be a bit of a mindfuck for Nadia. I feel like the way I'm saying Nadia is just like what we do in the shadows and the Nadia.
Nadia.
But for Nadia, she's got to recognize that this is very similar to what Dodds used to say. She might be thinking, is this almost like Dodds yelling at me from beyond the grave? Is this what I would be looking at if I did try to do the right thing here? Would Dodds have reacted the same way? Like, that's gotta be a mess for her. She'll never know the answer. And the other thing too is that because we don't see Stratter's face and that he always wears his helmet, it is a lot easier to imagine that that could be the Dodds of another dimension. It's easier for us to sort of picture Dodds in his boots. It's easier for Nadia to see Dodds in Stratter here. And I like that we don't see his face, because when he dies and his head is on his left side, which is a lot like how Dodds died, I do think that part of Nadia's shock of seeing him and laying down next to him and being like, oh my god, is because of how it reminds her of Dodds. And I think it's even more ironic because they clearly did not like each other. They had a strong distaste for one another, Stratter and Nadia. And it's just like, oh my god. It's a mess, and you understand why both of these characters are so opposed, and you understand where they're both coming from. Because on the other hand, you can't hate Nadia for thinking the way that she's thinking, for refusing to help Apex, because she is traumatized from her last mission, where she watched her friends, her teammates, her lover get brutally killed by this guy and the people involved in the shootout. And even just from like a wanting to help people who need it perspective, you can understand why she would rather save Gordon, why she would rather save a little girl. Because yeah, the little girl does need more help than Apex. She's just a little girl versus this guy who'll just go out and kill someone else again. Maybe the next people he kills will be another trauma team. The other thing too about Nadia is Nadia saying that she would save Dodds over anyone else, client and team-wise. This does go against trauma team's MO. The client is always right or always the most important. You can't blame her for that. You can't blame her other teammates for being like, bro, this is the job. Nadia's desire to save as many people who need her help as she possibly can, despite trauma team's strict focus on saving the client only, can cause issues on missions that can make or break things. You can't blame her for wanting to do that, but at the same time, it's like, Nadia, oh no. And then there's Dodds, who loves Nadia but is fighting to place his loyalty to the trauma team MO above all else, and you can't blame him for that either. Bit of a side note here with Dodds from earlier and his loyalty to trauma team. It definitely might be a thing of like, how can you be loyal to any corporation in the Cyberpunk universe? How can you be loyal to a corporation in ours? But when you think about the propaganda that almost definitely like exists towards corporations, when you think of like weaponized hyping people up and encouraging loyalty and encouraging passion in your work, like real life corporations today do this kind of thing. It reminds me of like the Walmart cheer thing that is really weird. Dodds lives in the cyberpunk world where you get swallowed up by fear and ambition. Did he love Nadia? Probably. But he also struggled with that other sort of side of things too. It's really interesting how the concept of honor is twisted and corrupted and warped by people with no sense of honor whatsoever. Now the other thing too, if we're talking about the animals and their own moral complexity here, the animals are obviously scum. Yes, they're another gang, they kill lots of people, they probably make countless people's lives throughout Night City a mess. But then you see that they loved their boss so much, and they were so devastated by his loss that they went on this all-out hunt for blood for Apex. They're not just doing this for shits and giggles, although I'm sure the animals are totally juiced up and in the mood for some violence. They are genuinely enraged at the loss of someone they cared about. And that's not unlike Nadia, who in her own way, like the animals, is going increasingly wild from the very beginning of this mission. As her helmet comes off and we see her face and her hair's all messier and getting messier, it's just like, oh yeah. And lastly, with Apex himself, that's also kind of a mess to sort through. Apex himself is fucked up. But Apex does, in contrast, tell Nadia to save the little girl, that the little girl deserves a chance. And as I said earlier, I do think part of it is because Apex is sort of self-aware. He's aware he's a scumbag, I think. He enjoys it. But I don't think he's necessarily a child killer. He recognizes that this little girl is innocent, unlike him, who has made his bed in life and has to sleep in it. This kid at least deserves a shot to turn out better than he did. I also think in Apex killing Stratter, Nadia only saw Apex as the killer. Apex, the guy who killed a man who was not too much unlike Dodds. It's interesting how Nadia starts the story trying to parrot the philosophy of Dodds in her interview to get back into the field. Basically, she's saying the things that he believed, even though as he lay there in death, staring at her with his dead gaze, kind of left to wonder, do you think that his sense of honor would have mattered to him in that last millisecond if he had been able to recognize he was about to die? Nadia is trying to force herself, just like she did, I think, with trying to save that client, to do what she thinks Dodds would have done. To make the MO of Trauma Team her identity. And then this is challenged or sort of highlighted, I guess, when Apex says to her, "You're Trauma Team, right? Without that, what are you?" This is what he says to her after he kills Stratter when he's like, "I saved your job." This line points out the overall identity crisis of Trauma Team, spoken by the man who first stirred it up at the beginning of the story. And I do think it's really important to remember that line, "To thine own self be true." As Nadia tries to force herself to be the Trauma Team medic, she's not herself. She wears that helmet, she's just another drone in the hive. But as she becomes herself, she becomes more steeled, she gets that determined look in her eyes. She takes her helmet off. We see Nadia for who she is. She does the things that she knows will help her, helping other people, like that little girl. I like how we see, like, even in the Chapter 2 artwork, we can see that shattered image of the Trauma Team mask and her face. With every floor she descends of that tower, she settles more into who she is. And speaking of what are you without Trauma Team, it was never about Trauma Team for Nadia. Her identity was wrapped up, yes, in helping people who needed her help, but it was also wrapped up in the people under the masks of her old team. Her friends, people that she survived deadly situations with, and Dodds, the man she loved. What is her life not without Trauma Team, but without them? The customer is not always right, Apex. Anybody who's worked customer service can attest to that. And Apex was also wrong in assuming that he was guaranteed to survive by having Platinum Trauma Team, because in the end he kind of paid for his own death. The animal almost strangled him with his arm? Well, guess what? Those arms that earned him the money through taking the lives of who knows how many people, including Nadia's family, basically. That's what kind of got him killed. He paid for it. How about that? I'm sure I've missed things in this whole discussion of moral complexity and all the things. Like, it's an amazing comic. But let me know if I missed anything or if there's any details that you noticed. I want to hear it. So what's the moral of the story? I have no idea, but I imagine it'll be different for everybody who reads this story. Please share. But I just keep thinking of the "to thine own self be true" line, because it is good advice. Good old William Shakespeare, though, made a good decision in making Polonius, of all characters in Hamlet, say this line, because he's the guy who needs to follow or listen to advice himself, because he's kind of a dummy. I guess he says one thing and does another. I'm reminded of Nadia's mistake with Dodds, where she did what she thought Dodds would have done, when we're even kind of looking at it like Dodds might not have even done what he would have done. And at the end of the day, the right thing for Nadia was to do the right thing for her, not as a trauma team member, but for herself. So don't be a Polonius. Don't be a Polonius. Thanks for watching this one, guys. This was a fun one. I got the giant omnibus. I got the omnibus version, the library version for this, and oh my god, the book smells so good. I like big books, I cannot lie. I'm so happy that you guys enjoyed the last comic exploration. It was a lot of fun. I had never looked at a book. I know a comic is kind of like more pictures than words, but still, it was a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to covering the rest of the comics as well. Thank you so much to my members, as always. You guys are awesome. Members get access to blooper reels and early access to all of my videos, and it's a way to help support the channel if you really like what's going on. Members, as always, thank you very much. If I was gonna rescue you with Trauma Team, I would make sure we made it to the rooftop and didn't die. So, and of course, thank you to everybody for watching, liking, commenting. I really appreciate it, and I will see you again in the next one. Goodbye.